Hello everybody, it's Tarun. Welcome to your 24th tutorial in the CSS for presentation course. In this tutorial, I'll start with the topic transforming the position with the help of translate property. Okay. Another thing you can do with the transform property is give the elements rendering a new location on the page using one of the three translate functions. So I'll show you one example now. Here the translate x function. Okay, first of all let me just show you the example now. Okay, here are the three examples. Here the translate x function allows you to move an element on a horizontal axis. Translate y is for moving along the vertical axis, and translate is a shorthand for combining both x and y values. Okay, translate, then translate x, and then translate y. So what if let's just use it in the browser only. Okay, so now if I add it here, so now let's see what happens in a web page. Okay, you can see that it is now shifted, and you can provide a length value in any of the CSS units or as a percentage value. Percentages are calculated on the width of the bounding box, that is from border edge to border edge, which incidentally is how percentages are calculated. Okay, so if you provide only one value for the shorthand translate function, it will presume to be translate x value, and the translate y value will be set to 0. So translate 20 pixels, okay, would be equivalent to applying both translate x 20 pixels and translate y 0. So we have two more functions to go, and the second last function here is scale function, which is transforming the size. So make an element appear larger or smaller using one of three scale functions, which are scale x, scale y, and the shorthand scale. Okay, so what is I'm trying to say is scale x, then scale y, and scale only. Okay, and scale x is for horizontal, scale y is for vertical. The value is a unitless number that specifies a size ratio. So I'll show you one example now. Okay, here you can see that for the transform I have applied scale x of 1.5. So now let's see what changes it in our browser. So you can see that the image has been magnified 1.5 times. So the scale shorthand lists a value for scale x and a value for scale y. This example which I am going to show you will make an element twice as wide but half as tall as the original. So how we can do that? Okay, I have just changed the scale x to scale only. Then I have specified 2,0.5. So now let's save it and see what happens in our browser. Okay, you can see that it has been magnified 2 times, and on the x-axis and thin made short half on the y-axis. Unlike translate, however, if you provide only one value for scale, it will be used as a scaling factor for both directions. So specifying scale 2 only is same as applying scale x2 and scale y2, which is intuitively the way you would want it to be. Okay, so we'll now see the last function of transform, which is skew function, which makes the things slanty. The quirky collection of skew properties, which are skew x, skew y, and the shorthand skew property, changes the angle of either the horizontal or vertical axis or both axes by a specified number of degrees. As for translate, if you provide only one value, it is used for skew x, and skew y will be set to 0. So the best way how to get an idea of how skew works, I'll just show you one example here. Okay, so here I'm just going to change it now, skew, and then in bracket 15 degrees I'm just going to give here. So now let's see what happens in our browser. Okay, you can see that it has turned 15 degrees. So now if I, okay, it was for skew x, but I specified only one value for skew. It definitely gone to skew x only. Now if I define it for skew y, let's say 30 degrees. So now let's save it and see what happens in our browser. You can see it tilts 30 degree. And now if I use skew and then I will use 15 and 13 degrees respectively for x and y directions. So now let's save it and see what happens in the browser. Okay, you can see something like this. So this was all in the transform functions. So now we'll apply multiple transforms. And of course it is possible to apply more than one transform to a single element. Just list out the functions and their values separated by spaces. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is this, you can do it like this: transform, then function and its value, then function and its value. So in the example which I'm going to show you, I have made the image in the web page which gets larger, tilt a little and move down to the right when the mouse is over it or when it is in focus. Okay, so I'm just going to remove all of this. Okay, so now let's save it and see what happens in the browser. Okay, you can see it here. When I take the mouse, it moves forward. Okay, you can say forward, or it gets larger and then it moves and it gets tilt also. It is important to note that the transforms are applied in the order in which they are listed. For example, if you apply a translate, okay, here you can see the scale, rotate, translate. If, for example, if you apply a translate and then rotate, you would get a different result than a rotate and then a translate. So another thing to watch out is that if you want to apply an additional transform on a different state, such as hover, focus or active, you need to repeat all of the transform already applied to the element. For example, this anchor element which I have in the web page will be rotated 45 degrees in a normal state. If I apply a scale transform on the hover state, it would lose the rotation unless I explicitly declare it again. So, okay. So this was all about the multiple transforms. So now we'll see something about 3D transforms. In addition to the two-dimensional transform functions, the CSS transform spec also describes a system for creating a sense of space and perspective. Combined with transitions, you can use 3D transforms to create rich interactive interfaces such as image carousels, flippable cards, or spinning cubes. Okay, so you can see that there is no shortage of CSS cubes on web pages right now. It must be a good project to learn on. So I'll just show you a figure now which shows a few examples of interfaces created with 3D transforms. In the past, if you saw 3D interfaces like these, you would assume that it was Flash. Now it is native browser capabilities and good old CSS3. So I'll show you the figure now. So these are some of the examples which I was talking about. 3D transforms are not a need to know skill for folks just starting out in web design. So I'm not going to go into a full detail here, but I will give you a taste of what it takes to add a third dimension to a design. If you would like to learn more, so I'll just tell you few more places where you can start these tutorials. So I'll just show you now the places, tell you the places. So these are the two places where you can learn 3D dimension CSS transforms. okay, which are Adventures in the Third Dimension CSS 3D Transforms by Peter Gaston. Okay, you can go to this link. Okay, and second one is Intro to 3D Transform by David DeSandro, and you can go to this link for this book. So to give you a basic example, I am going to use the images which we have used earlier to arrange them as though they are in a 3D carousel style gallery. So what I am going to do, I am going to make a markup with unordered list. So let me just make up the markup here. Okay. So I'm thinking that instead of showing it in the browser, I'll show you the figures of the material which I have now with me. So this is the markup. So here you can see it is an unordered list, and these are the images, few images. So I'll just show you how will it look like in the carousel 3D style carousel style gallery.